Math and Middle School Science, Part 2, Units. A confusing aspect of calculating formulas in science is learning how units are determined in those formulas. But it's really fairly simple. Remember that the math you do with the numbers is also the math you will do with the units. Let me show you what I mean. As an example, when finding the area of a rectangle, we multiply the width times the length. I want you to keep in mind that this same rectangle will have the same area regardless of its position that it's in. And also, it doesn't matter what side we call the width and what side we call the length. To calculate the area of this rectangle, we're going to multiply 5 centimeters times 8 centimeters. Of course, 5 times 8 will equal 40. But in math and in science, we should always include the units. We figure out the units just as we figured out the numbers in the problem. We multiply centimeters times centimeters in this case. And we get centimeters to the second power, or centimeters squared. So our answer is 40 centimeters squared. The same is true if we found the volume of a rectangular prism. We would multiply each dimension to calculate the number value. Here we have 5 times 3 times 4, which equals 60. Then we do the same with the units. In this case, we multiply centimeters times centimeters times centimeters, and we get centimeters cubed. So our final solution becomes 60 centimeters cubed. Now let's calculate the speed of this motorcycle using the formula speed equals distance divided by time. If the distance traveled is 100 meters and the time it took is 5 seconds, then we get speed, or S, equals 100 meters divided by 5 seconds. Dividing 100 by 5 gives us 20. And dividing meters by seconds gives us the unit. And this is going to be meters divided by seconds, or 20 meters per second. Now we come to the unit for acceleration, which is confusing for many people. Let's say a ball falls to the player's glove. At the top, the ball has a velocity of 0 meters per second. When it reaches his glove, the velocity is 20 meters per second. The fall takes 2 seconds from top to bottom. Using the formula for acceleration, the change in velocity will be 20 meters per second, and we divide that by the change in time, which is 2 seconds. Now, it's okay if you don't understand the formula, since we're just focusing on how the units work. 20 divided by 2 is 10, but now let's look at the units. We have meters per second divided by seconds, so the final unit will be meters per second per second. You're also going to find this rewritten as meters per second squared. Now, the math that explains how both of these units are exactly the same is probably a topic for another video. But as you can see, whatever you do mathematically with the numbers, we also do with the letters and the units. So, one thing to keep in mind is that formulas can make complicated units. And the more complicated the formula, the more complicated the units can be. As a simple example, let's take a look at this formula where force equals mass times acceleration. Mass is measured in kilograms, acceleration is measured in meters per second per second. So the final unit is going to be kilograms times meters per second, or it would be read kilogram meters per second per second. Now that's a mouthful. Because that's difficult to say in a very complicated unit, we just call it the Newton. So oftentimes when the unit is very complicated, they'll just simply name it after the scientist that developed the formula. So remember, the math that is done with the numbers is the math you also do with the units, and that's an easy way to figure out what the units are for your answer of a formula. I hope that clears up any confusions that you might have.